Guys, it's on time and let's start off. I think the attendees are joining in, right? Um, hey everyone, thank you for joining us today for our live webinar. Our topic for today is cloud-enabled analytics modernization for manufacturing to help you learn how to accelerate and de-risk your cloud migration journey. I'm Vaishnavi Golapudi, your moderator for today's webinar, and I'm happy to welcome Yellowbrick, our partners, to talk about meeting the demands for faster performance and scalability for manufacturing businesses. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our speakers who have a long-standing experience in building high-performance analytics ecosystem. First is Yusuf Gulamhussain. Yusuf is the Chief Technology Officer for Systech Solutions and has been instrumental in Systech's efforts to bring new products and solutions to market. Yusuf's leadership and deep expertise in data and analytics has given him an edge while establishing Systech as a niche player in the field. Our next speaker is Ramki Ranganathan. Ramki is the Vice President for Data and Analytics for Systech Solutions. He's been at the helm for many of Systech's technology initiatives. He's the Head of Advanced Analytics and Cloud at Systech, innovating on novel technology frameworks and solutions for clients across industries. And joining them today is Mark Cusack. Mark is the Chief Technology Officer for Yellowbrick Data. Before joining Yellowbrick, Mark was the Vice President for Data and Analytics at Teradata, where he led a variety of product management and technology teams in data warehouse and advanced analytics groups. He was also the Chief Architect for Teradata's IoT analytics effort. Mark joined Teradata from the startup Rainstorm, where he was the co-founding developer and Chief Architect. Prior to Rainstorm, Mark was a lead scientist in the UK Ministry of Defense. So welcome all of you. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. We have set aside some time at the end of this session for Q&A. So please type your questions into the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen as we go. And when we get to the end, we can field some of those for you if we don't get them answered throughout the session. So Yusuf, we'll kick it over to you first.
Thanks, Vaishnavi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. My name is Yusuf, Chief Technology Officer at Systech. Before we get into the main topic, which is analytics modernization, I would like to talk about, the actual need of modernizing, and more importantly, the urgency of modernizing on analytics and data. Now, we all know the pandemic has had a profound effect on businesses across the board, including manufacturing companies. And what we have observed is organizations that were digitally savvy, or in other words, that were digitally native, they not only survived the pandemic, but somehow they were able to thrive while others were struggling. So in the post-pandemic world, what we kind of observe is, in order to stay relevant and stay resilient for any kind of future crisis like COVID, companies need to build a modern business platform. Now, what I mean by a modern business platform is a digitally connected, intelligent ecosystem of your customers, your partners, your own workforce, and more importantly, specifically within the manufacturing sector, all your assets, be it your IoT devices, be it your robotic manufacturing lines that are generating a ton of data. How all of those entities are connected digitally will define whether your company is going to be relevant and resilient for any kind of future crisis, right? But most importantly, this digital platform needs to be driven and empowered through a robust data and analytics ecosystem at the very core of it. And CIOs will need to build this business platform where enterprise intelligent capabilities is primarily fueling all the decisions across the ecosystem. So basically, your business is going to be data driven, and the decisions are going to be smarter based out of data and analytics. Now, how do you stay relevant? The only way companies can stay relevant is, let me just go to the next slide. It's the ability to adapt to market changes. Now that's the key to staying relevant and staying ahead of competition. How quickly can you adapt to market condition will determine whether you succeed or whether you fail. And the only way to do it is by enabling four key capabilities within your organization. Number one is the ability to sense what's going around, what's happening with your competitors, what's happening in the market. So things like COVID, when it happens, people that were able to react quickly were the ones that were able to come up with new business models and then survive and thrive within the pandemic. So the very first thing is the ability to sense and know what's going on. The second thing is about, once you know what's going on, how do you harmonize all that information and then experiment new business ideas using the information that you have gathered. And finally, act upon that insights or actions that you have taken, and then basically define your next best action or next business model, and so on and so forth. So essentially, the key is the ability to sense, the ability to harmonize information, experiment with that information, and then appropriately, proactively act upon that information. Now, those four things in combination is what truly helps define an adaptive business strategy. And at the core of it is what drives this whole strategy is a solid and a robust data analytics ecosystem. So essentially, it's about technology coming together in order to solve business problem using data and analytics. And that, in essence, is the transformation that companies are adopting in the post-COVID world. So let's now understand, what is this transformation? What is digital transformation that we keep hearing about? In just simple terms, it's about applying smart technology to remove point of friction. So essentially, what we are talking about is, how do we take every single business process and make it smarter and intelligent using data, right? So a combination of digitization. So if any of these processes are manual, where a human intervention is required, or it's not automated, you first digitize it, then you apply automation to it, and that's very prevalent within the manufacturing sector, where a lot of these repetitive tasks can be automated using RPA, and then infuse that with AI and machine learning. How do we make that whole process smarter? So a combination of digitization, automation, and intelligence is what will help companies achieve their core business objectives. Now, what you see on the left are the five key business objectives that pretty much every organization within the manufacturing sector is gunning for. The number one is obviously the customer experience, fueling growth, increase in revenue. You have operational excellence, which is again a very key aspect within manufacturing. Is about, how do I optimize my process? How do I get more efficient? Is a key focus. And then there are others, mitigating risk, data security and privacy, and coming up with new product ideas based on data and analysis, right? And down a little bit later in the webinar, we will touch upon some of the analytics that can truly drive these five business objectives. So stay tuned for that. Now, how is these objectives being achieved is primarily through modern technology. So we do have these modern technology enablers that are truly solving or helping solving business problems, as I had stated. Again, within the manufacturing sector, robotics and automation is at peak. And we have seen that companies that have adopted RPA have truly exceeded beyond their competition, right? And then you couple that with all kinds of IoT devices, which are infused with machine learning and AI. And then the whole culmination of all that data points which are collected and applying solid data analytics on top of it is how companies are succeeding in today's digital world, right? So now let's take a look at how is this, how is data analytics ecosystem truly making uh, uh, your business processes smarter and intelligent. So what you see here is Systech's modern data analytics framework. Now, if you notice, it kind of summarizes the adaptive business strategy that I talked about. So our modern data framework truly helps you sense what's going on. And what I mean by that is on the far left, let me just initiate my laser pointer. So here you have all your operational data, be it your customer, be it your partner, be it your IoT devices, the ability to ingest all that information within your data analytics ecosystem. So that's the first step in being adaptive. So the ability to sense in true sense is about, are you able to access all the information within your organization? So that's step number one. Step number two is, once you have access to information, are you able to harmonize information, organize it, collate it, so then you could use it for downstream analytics? And a whole bunch of different technology comes into play in harmonizing data. And one such technology that you will hear a little bit later again in the webinar is Yellowbrick, which is truly built for a modern data workload. And most importantly, it's built for distributed data workload, because in a modern environment, data is located everywhere. They could be on-prem, they could be in the cloud, they could be on the edge. And you'll learn from Mark how Yellowbrick kind of brings it all together and offers a real powerful platform that enables analytics. So once you harmonize it, then comes experimentation, which is about how do you analyze data, come up with different models, and deploy those models within your business processes. So essentially, you're gleaning intelligence or insights from data and then applying it back to your existing processes, thereby making them smarter, making them more intelligent. So our modern data framework truly transforms your existing processes and makes it smarter, makes it much more intelligent. And it takes a whole bunch of different technology to bring it all together, right? And every company is kind of in a, they are in that life cycle of how they build their framework. They all vary in where they are in the life cycle. So some are still on a legacy platform, but the key is, how do you stay up to date and current on the new technology innovation that is happening? For example, going away from legacy data platforms to a more modern Yellowbrick platform. So it is imperative to kind of stay up to date, stay current, and truly leverage modern technology to attain your business objective. Now, it's not just enough to modernize, but in today's world, it is extremely important to accelerate your modernization. And the reason being that the critical factor is time to value and time to market. How quickly can you put technology to work to achieve your business value is the key. So it's not just important to modernize, but we believe that we need to find ways to accelerate that modernization process, which is where what you will hear next from Ramki, our next speaker, is how Systech enables accelerated modernization of analytics and data ecosystem. With that, let me turn it over to Ramki.
Thank you, Yusuf. So it was pretty clear from what Yusuf talked about in terms of how this modern data framework has become an essential piece for enterprises to stay competitive, especially in the recent times. Especially in the post-pandemic era, where the way the enterprises have to reinvent themselves in order to survive in this market, and data analytics strategy has been the backbone for enterprises to quickly adopt to these kind of market changes that's happening, and for them to take key business decisions according to the evolving or changing market space. So there is no doubt or second thoughts about how important is a modernization effort. And Yusuf also outlined about what modernization really means. What does a typical modern data framework look like, right? And it all boils down to making the right information available to the right person at the right time through the right channel. And this is becoming challenging because the volume of data is growing at a rapid pace. And I'm sure all of you have heard about statistics in terms of terabytes to petabytes and zettabytes as well, and the predicted data volume growth over the next few years. And not only that, data has become complicated because the data structures, it's not only structured or relational format, it's in different format like freehand, text or images or PDF documents or videos and whatnot. So there are a lot of information or hidden insights available in these kind of unstructured data as well that companies need to tap into. So what does that modernization really mean? So in the next few slides, I wanted to define modernization at a much more granular level, and what how enterprises are approaching this modernization. And as Yusuf talked about, I want to highlight how Systech can help accelerate that modernization effort. And then we will end up by looking at one of the use cases that we work with one of our manufacturing customers. Now, as outlined in the slide, modernization is migration of the data analytics environment in the current traditional state to a more modern state, right? Now, at the heart of this migration is what we call as a data migration. And what this involves is migrating from a current traditional data warehouse system that is running on like Netezza or Oracle or SQL Server to a cloud-based ecosystem, more specifically a hybrid ecosystem where the data warehouses can be on the cloud, on hybrid, or on edge, and so on. And what this involves is typically, data structure migration and, tables and files and, databases and so on, is what constitutes this data migration. Surrounding this data warehouse, there is a whole ecosystem. There are processes that bring in data from different source systems, like what Yusuf was outlining in his modern data framework. Data is generated constantly at a rapid pace in systems, both internal and external to enterprises. And how do you get that data into a format that can be used for analysis and gleaning insights from it is what we call as a ETL layer, or extract transform layer, or extract load and transform, ETL or ELT layer. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have data being consumed from the data warehouses. And typically, we have analytics platforms and dashboard visualization platforms like Tableau or Power BI or MicroStrategy, Cognos, and whatnot, right? That consume data from the data warehouse in order to provide insights through dashboards and visualizations. And there are other ways of consuming data from a data warehouse as well. Data can be federated through multiple departments within an organization, or it could be federated to outside parties, either vendors or partners or customers and so on. So as you can see, the heart of the data analytics environment is what we call as a data warehouse. And surrounding this is a whole ecosystem that brings in data into the data warehouse and also helps downstream systems consume this data from the data warehouse. Now, a migration involves, modernization of all these three pillars, if you will. Now, typically there is a modernization strategy that companies have to go through and build a roadmap. A phased roadmap is phased implementation is what we suggest to our customers. And based on that implementation roadmap or modernization roadmap, now all these three work streams can be modernized. So what I mean by that is, yes, from the heart, you can migrate from an on-prem traditional data warehouse like Netezza to a modern data warehouse platform like Yellowbrick. And the enterprise ETL platform can also be migrated or modernized to more a cloud native, scalable, highly flexible, highly efficient ETL component. On the other side, the analytics migration can also be done. Either we can move to a cloud native solution like Tableau Cloud or Looker or MicroStrategy Cloud for the matter, or you could do a simple migration of an on-prem data center to a platform or infrastructure as a service and install these components on the cloud as well. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of different combinations here, right? Either you can migrate one piece at a time, or you can decide to do all in one shot, or you can have a certain number of combinations that you want to migrate to, right? So this is what we talk about. When we say migration or modernization, it boils down to these three streams. Now, how do you approach it, right? So we have well-defined phases, and of course, this is a high-level view of the four distinct phases, what we call that needs attention, and we have well-defined milestones that at the end of every phase. But it all starts with discovery and analysis or assessment. So what we do here is identify all of the different objects that needs to be migrated across the three streams that we saw in the previous slide. And what that means is that you will have a list of databases, list of tables, views, materialized views, and whatnot, all kind of data warehouse objects. You might have all of the ETL components and processes that needs to be migrated, as well as on the dashboards analytics side. So preparing an inventory is a first step, right? Complete inventory, a detailed inventory of all objects that need to be migrated. And then we do what we call as an impact analysis or a data lineage analysis. And this is very important because we, especially on the validation phase, if I'm validating a report or a dashboard after migration, I need to know where the data for the dashboard is coming from, what kind of transformations that's happening under the scene. So that way I can have a very well-structured validation, automated validation as well, in order to make sure that all of the objects that I'm migrating have been validated successfully. And based on your source data warehouse and the target data warehouse like Yellowbrick, there needs to be a mapping in terms of the what we call as a structural mapping. So what that means is that the data types can be different, the table layouts can be different, the physical table design can be different. And what we have seen in our experience is that even though we do a forklift migration from, let's say, Netezza to Yellowbrick, there might be a portion of re-architecting that needs to be done in order to fully take advantage of a modern data warehouse platform like Yellowbrick. So the mapping need not be one-to-one in terms of X data type here in the source data warehouse is Y data type in Yellowbrick. It can be much more complicated than that. And then we have this whole sizing and then setup of the Yellowbrick infrastructure itself on the cloud. And the third phase is the most important phase where the majority of the work is being done, which is actual migration, data structures, data, and the whole system. And the last phase is validating and making sure that all of not only the historical data has been migrated successfully, the ongoing ETL process and the reports and dashboards are also performing the way in terms of providing the same data accuracy after migration. And after that, we have deployment and production. And then, of course, we have monitoring and resource utilization. So these are the four distinct phases that we have as part of our migration methodology. And we have successfully implemented this methodology over very many successful migrations for several of our customers. Now, where does automation come into play here? And that's where our product DB Shift comes into picture. So automation can be applied in each and every phase outlined here, right from discovery all the way to monitoring after deployment. So we have crawlers that kind of, the environment might be a Netezza, MicroStrategy, Informatica ecosystem. So we have crawlers that kind of automatically gathers and prepares this initial inventory, which can be later cleaned up in order to come up with a final inventory. It also automatically does the structural mapping to Yellowbrick based on what system that you are migrating from. The whole concept of setting up YB on the cloud can be automated through, based on what cloud provider that you're going to go with, AWS or Azure or Google. We can create automated deployment scripts, for example, through CloudFormation or Terraform. And majority of the automation happens in the actual migration phase, either it be initial data structures, what we call as data definition language statements, create tables, and all other supporting objects in data warehouse, migration of those first, migration of historical data, and validation. All of those things are automated in our DB Shift platform. And the data validation itself can be quite complicated. And at different stages, you can apply different levels of data validation. Typically, when we load data into the data warehouse, we have a staging environment. So we do mostly one-to-one data loads from your source system to source databases to the staging area, and then apply the transformations, and then you load it into the final data warehouse. And this strategy also helps with implementing an ELT strategy. So from source to stage, it's typically one-to-one, and majority of those mappings, and 90-95% of those data load processes can be 100% automated, migrated to your target Yellowbrick environment. And the validation that happens at that phase can be, a random record check or metric stratification. We do a, metric totals by different, aggregated by different dimensions and so on. And when we do the final data warehouse validation, it could be much more in-depth data validation. And typically, certain enterprises would require 100% validation, which means that we have to do cell-by-cell comparison between what you have in your source traditional data warehouse to the Yellowbrick data warehouse. Right. So, so that's where we come in. And we have achieved at least 70% automation in our migrations that we have done before, modernizations that we have done for our customers. And the remaining 30% is what we call as accelerated. It's not like you need 100% manual effort, but it can highlight in terms of what needs to be done, what needs to be changed, what needs to be tweaked. In a sense, it's kind of prescriptive in order to complete the remaining 30% migration that cannot be automated. And that could be, an ETL process, which, instead of migrating it as is using forklift, it could be tweaked for better performance. It could be a report or dashboard that, that could be redesigned for better performance and better look and feel and so on. So at the core of our DB Shift utility is what we call as the mapper, which is the brain of the migration. And this mapper is not just between your source data warehouse that can reside on SQL Server or Netezza or MySQL to Yellowbrick. You have, at that level, you have tables and, all the performance tuning that has been done based on your source data warehouse. In case of SQL Server, you might have created indexes, your distribution strategy in Netezza, and so on. You have a whole identity and access management policies, security policies surrounding that. It could be an ecosystem surrounding it using, data manipulation using stored procedures or functions, user-defined functions, materialized views, and so on. Not only that, it also does a mapping of, let's say, if you want to migrate from Informatica, a Power Center-based set of workflows and mappings from Netezza to Yellowbrick, the way Informatica connector works is different for these two environments. So DBShift knows a setting XYZ in Netezza is an equivalent setting ABC in Yellowbrick for Informatica, for example. So it does that kind of a mapping, and that mapping is what is used for the automation of migration as well as validation, right? And to talk about one of the success stories, with respect to the manufacturing industry, we did a recent migration, Goldman Sachs portfolio company. They are manufacturers of air filters. So we migrated them from an on-prem SQL Server environment to a cloud environment, and of course, and I don't have to highlight the benefits of this of the modernization, and Yusuf has talked about it and elaborate. But in terms of with respect to specifics, they were able to have insights 2 times faster at twice or half the cost of what they were doing from a traditional data warehouse, right? So they have their whole forecasting process, sales forecasting process now running on the cloud, which is a key piece that drives the rest of the manufacturing process, right? So I hope I was able to give you, what the efforts are involved in the modernization and how DBShift can accelerate that modernization effort, and along with this use case. So with that, I will hand it over to Mark to talk about the Yellowbrick platform and how it fits into the modern data framework architecture.
Thanks very much, Ramki. And so, and what I'm going to talk about is the kind of next level down about how Yellowbrick plays a key role in this modern data framework that we've outlined earlier today. So Yellowbrick is a data warehouse. Hopefully that's very clear by now. But before I go into some of the details about our value and how our customers get business value out of Yellowbrick, I wanted to talk a little bit about the company by way of an introduction. So Yellowbrick is a global business. We're based in Mountain View, California. We were founded in 2014. And our mission really is to bring together data that might be distributed across an entire enterprise, whether that's on the cloud, in on-premises data centers, or even at the network edge, and make it fully and easily queryable via SQL. So Yellowbrick is a data warehouse, a highly relational structured SQL data warehouse. And for many businesses, of course, the most important data in their entire estate is often resides within a data warehouse, and a lot of historical analytics is run around that. And so we're a database for analytics. We're massively parallel in the way that we can scale out. We're fully elastic as well. We run on every public cloud and on-prem as well. And as I mentioned, we support SQL as our query language. So Yellowbrick Data Warehouse is a single product with a number of different deployment options here. And as was kind of hinted at earlier, we follow a microservices approach into the way that we've implemented Yellowbrick. When we deploy on the cloud, we deploy on the native cloud Kubernetes services. We're fully containerized in the way that we work. But we're very different from a lot of other data warehouse vendors in the cloud in that we provide the same kind of capabilities and industry-leading price performance, both on every public cloud, but also for on-premises data centers as well. And one of the things that we've learned looking at the market and developing the product over time is there's a very disjoint user experience around data warehousing these days, depending on which vendor you go for and depending on where you deploy data warehousing. And so what we designed is a single pane of glass, a single control plane that spans your data warehouse implementations across clouds and even on-prem and some hybrid combination of those. So we truly give you probably the only unique and homogeneous way of managing your data within a data warehouse across any deployment option that you might have. And just to really emphasize the difference between ourselves and major other competitors within the data warehousing space, well, if you look at the data warehouse offerings that the main cloud service providers offer, obviously they're typically only on the cloud provider offered by themselves, whereas Snowflake is offered on all three major public clouds, and so is Yellowbrick. However, Yellowbrick has the added distinction of being able to deploy within your own data center as well. There's another distinction that comes into play here, which is very important from a business model and a cloud spend perspective, is that when we deploy our software within your cloud account, you're paying for your own data warehousing infrastructure directly to your cloud provider. So that means if you're a large enterprise that's negotiated significant discounts already with AWS or Azure or Google, you can take advantages of that to reduce your spend on Yellowbrick for data warehousing. We have a really, really simple pricing model here. There's no credits. We don't charge for storage. We only charge for the compute that you consume. And so we charge that on an on-demand consumption basis in a number of virtual CPUs consumed every hour, or on a subscription basis where you subscribe to a certain capacity of compute for a year or 3 years and consume it. And that's often the chosen method that many of our customers go for, because it means that their cloud spend is very predictable. And we give obviously big discounts if you choose to follow our subscription capacity model versus our on-demand billing model, but you can combine the two together. As I mentioned, you secure your own data with Yellowbrick in your own cloud account. The Yellowbrick software stack is fully automated. It deploys using cloud-native services into your cloud account. Your data remains fully under your ownership. You don't hand it off to Snowflake to manage on your behalf. It remains fully under your control. And it's very important, as you'll see in some of the customer use cases we have, where there's a lot of sensitivity around the data. There's IP issues involved or privacy issues, and data ownership and governance and security is critical. I also talked about our on-premises capabilities, but I also wanted to pull out a lot of the efficiencies that we built into the software, which I think is often neglected when you look at the landscape of cloud data warehouses today. We've taken the best of breed of workload management capabilities and built those into Yellowbrick. So that means we're really good at serving workloads at a high concurrency, mixed workloads of streaming ingest, bulk loading, reporting, ad hoc queries, interactive queries. We can absolutely do that in a much, much smaller footprint and therefore a lower price point than other competitors. And that concurrency capability that we have in the cloud in particular is something that really sets us apart as well. You can scale to hundreds and hundreds of users against a single Yellowbrick instance in AWS or Azure or Google, using a fraction of the compute infrastructure that many other of our competitors require. So many of our customers have lots in common. We have customers in the manufacturing areas, within retail, within hospitality, and within government. And in fact, 2 of the top 10 global insurers count us as Yellowbrick vendors, as vendors to them for their data warehousing. And 3 of the top 10 hedge funds actually use Yellowbricks, and 25% of all equities trades every day in the US actually pass through Yellowbrick systems and are used to provide financial and regulatory reporting on a daily basis. And 2 of the top 10 global telecommunications companies use Yellowbrick for things like revenue assurance and prepaid mobile cell phone recognition and rewards programs and things like that. And the top 3 credit card payments and payments providers also use Yellowbrick for fraud detection and data lake analytics and so on and so forth. So we're embedded in some of the largest enterprises in the world. And actually, Systech have helped us get into these enterprises in many cases by supporting that migration journey and modernization journey that many of our customers found themselves on. So many of our customers run business critical data warehousing use cases, often involving money. So they have to be available 24/7. We can't afford to make and produce incorrect results. They often came from a legacy platform. They use Systech's DB Shift capabilities to help move their workloads and validate their workloads onto Yellowbrick. They're going under incremental cloud migrations where they may have upgraded and modernized on premises first, but they're now moving with Yellowbrick into the cloud. And that movement into the cloud is a really, really easy task when you've got Yellowbrick on-prem and you've got Yellowbrick on the cloud, because it's the same software everywhere. We've also have support for both the legacy ETL and downstream reporting tools, as well as the latest cloud native capabilities as well. And I think Ramki and Yusuf were talking about this a little bit earlier about how it's really important to make sure you don't just consider when you're modernizing how you migrate your data warehousing and your data analytics platform stack, but also all of the connected tissue around that in terms of data pipeline and ingestion and so on and so forth. So we've built a mechanism of connectors, which means you don't have to boil the ocean and change everything at once within your ecosystem. You can modernize with Yellowbrick first. It will fit in with your existing Informatica Power Center ETL tasks or Talend or data stage tasks. But if you want to modernize to those cloud-based Informatica cloud services or the Talend cloud, Tableau cloud rather, that we mentioned earlier, you can do that too. So we've helped really in three main areas to summarize. We've helped customers modernize from legacy databases like Netezza, Oracle, and Teradata. We've also helped modernize customers and move away from Hadoop onto Yellowbrick as well, moving towards a much more modern, much more scalable, much more high concurrency platform that's going to really see their way into the future. We've helped customers on their migration to the cloud. We're really helping them to de-risk their buying decisions and their cloud decisions. When they're on-prem, we can convert them to a modern Yellowbrick stack on-prem, and then they've got optionality about where they want to go after that, and even have a hybrid combination of on-prem and cloud data warehousing. And third, we've innovated with faster answers. One of the key standout capabilities of Yellowbrick is our fantastic price performance. We are often 5 to 10 times faster than other data warehouses and come in typically at a fifth of the cost in terms of total cost of ownership. And time really is money. You get faster answers, and that really means less spend on compute and more business value, better return on your investment at the end of the day. So we've worked very closely with Systech on a number of projects, and this is really important for having a really low risk migration strategy around here. I'm not going to go into the details about it because Ramki kind of went through all of the automation, the workload management and cost estimations that's done, the automation that goes in there. But at the end of the day, with the partnership between Systech and Yellowbrick, getting from even the very, very largest migration projects that we've tackled, it really, really reduces the risk and the overall costs and overrun problems that might be associated with many migrations and modernizations. And I just want to finish off with a manufacturing related use case with a company that we're working with within the CPU processor manufacturing space. And so, like many chip manufacturers in this area, one of the key KPIs they're trying to improve and optimize, going back to Yusuf's point earlier, is the yield they get out of wafers. How many chips do they get that are successful and have a high enough quality at the end of the day? And so what they're using Yellowbrick for and looking at using us for is how they improve and diagnose operational defects on the production line sooner. And ultimately improve the yield. And a change of the efficiency of the yield by even 0.1% can actually mean millions of dollars, because what you're trying to avoid is a lot of waste, a lot of downstream and material and quality issues that really slow the time to market and cause all of these material problems. Now, one of the things they generate as part of this production line process are these fabrication recipes, and are effectively long list of parameters that describe the processes that were in place when they were creating these wafers. And the challenge is they really want to look at the quality with respect to previous runs and previous recipes from this production line. And so on a very, very rapid real-time basis, what they want to do is take the million or so records that constitute a current fabrication recipe and join it with 10 plus billion records of recent production data of other Q&A information. And this needs to return in 5 minutes or less. This is a strict SLA that we have to address here. And they have to do this on a continuous basis. As you can imagine, they've got real-time data streaming into Yellowbrick. They're continuously processing this, and they want to be able to turn around and make changes to the production line and the quality issues as fast as possible. And what they're seeing as well with the exponential growth in the transistor count, the smaller chipset features, they're going to grow and grow and grow the amount of historical data that they want to compare with their runs, and the number of recipes and the size of the recipes are just going to grow and grow. So they want to go from just storing 6 months worth of historical production line information up to 7 years. And the way they want to do that with Yellowbrick is adopt Yellowbrick on AWS and store all this information in cheap and deep object storage and take advantage of the fact that Yellowbrick has separated compute and storage. We store all our data in S3 on AWS. We have fully elastic, powered by Kubernetes, and we can scale as their business challenge grows as well. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Ramki.
Thanks, Mark. So I think Yusuf also highlighted this when he talked about the data analytics strategy helping the business strategy. And then Mark also talked about, when he talked about the use case in terms of what kind of sophisticated analysis are being made possible through this modernization, right? So we have a sample of the analytical use cases in the manufacturing industry, as well as practices and technology platforms that actually help us achieve the business goals. So on the bottom portion, we have the business outcomes or the business objectives, and on the top we have the analytical use cases. Now the modernization is going to open the tap for for analysts. So what I mean by that is no longer analysts are going to wait for a compute power being available for them during a specific period of time in a day, or the ability to kind of process huge volumes of data or different kinds of structure, different kinds of data. So basically, the tap is open, meaning that they can spend whatever time and how much of time they want on creating or making these analytics more sophisticated and more accurate, if you will. So I wanted to take a couple of examples from the list of analytics, what you see here across different functional areas of an enterprise, starting from sales and marketing, focusing on customer experience and customer satisfaction, and thereby increasing the revenue, moving on to the operational excellence in terms of all of these advanced mechanisms, IoT included, being applied to reduce operational expenses and also make the whole manufacturing distribution process a lot more efficient, all the way to being innovative, right? What else can we do apart from the traditional analytics? So I want to take a couple of examples focused on the production planning, if you will, and just show you a few of the dashboards that can help you do that, right? Now, the dashboards themselves, where the sophistication and the complication comes in is not only getting data from the ERP systems internal to an organization, but getting external data, like for example, a market data, what we call this, in the automotive industry, we have this Polk market data, which kind of gives a sense of, what different kinds of models and makes of cars being sold in the market, integrating that with with your enterprise data in order to come up with an analytical insight. That's where I think the more sophistication and more complication happens, right? So as with this is a dashboard, a sample dashboard that I'm showing here for a car manufacturer. So the dashboards that you see here compares the planned production versus the actual production that happens. And of course, what the bar chart shows here is that the demands are sometimes met and sometimes there is a backlog of production. And this is very key for production planning people in order to not only from a long-term perspective, but also next week, what should be the target, the production plan, not only based on the actual demand forecast, but also based on the backlog that you have here. So it becomes very critical that this dashboard, the data is refreshed constantly, and then this dashboard is being used for production planning. And of course, this data can be sliced and diced by different business dimensions. What we have here on the bottom is broken down by different geographical areas, the markets. You can also look at it broken down by different drive types, or you can look at a particular model of the car, a particular market, as well as different time periods. Now, the next dashboard I wanted to show you is more of analysis on on-time delivery, right? How many cars were delayed in terms of shipment? How many cars were shipped early? How many cars were shipped on time, right? And as you can see from the chart, most of the cars were shipped on time, but there were instances where there was a delay in meeting that expectation. Now, you can actually drill down to the individual win level and then go into further details about where it is being manufactured, which plant, and where exactly is the delay and things like that. So you can go down to that level to figure out what the actual root cause of the production delay is, and then fix those errors. And of course, this can be further broken down by different markets and other dimensions as well, just like what we saw in the previous dashboard. Another way to look at the early, on time, and late deliveries is that, which I kind of outlined when I talked about the first dashboard, is to look at, not only from a production planning perspective, but also looking at what the backlog is, right, on a particular week, and then accordingly adjusting your production plan going forward. So what this shows is that, I picked up an example on the week of 6/30. 341 cars were delivered on time, but the previous week there was a delay of 13 cars, which also got bundled along with that week's delivery, right? And then looking at it from an historic standpoint, the following week 4 cars were delivered early. So what this kind of says is that the production process was able to catch up not only the previous week's late deliveries, but also was able to make 4 early deliveries in the coming week, and so on. And again, you can drill down to the individual car level and then figure out, who's responsible for it, and then what kind of delay, in case of a delay, what is the root cause for the delay, and then resolving it. Right. One other comparison that you can do is comparing it against sales. We saw that we compared plans versus actuals, but here we actually compare it also along with the orders that we got. And as you can see, the orders, are always higher. There is a great demand for these cars in the market. So this gives another view for production planning people, not only from the forecast and the backlog, but also keeping in mind how many orders keep coming in. And that will be a great insight for production planning people. So the production dashboard, again, gives you not only from the previous dashboards that we saw, or more from a week-to-week perspective, but this also gives you a cumulative vision into what is a backlog, right? So as of December 21st, we had a backlog of a total backlog of 238 cars that were not, we didn't meet the actuals and things like that, right? So the same thing, you can drill down by slice and dice this information by different markets, different models, and in order to get that actual insights. Now, what I want to show you is also, I talked about integrating third-party data, market data, which is going to be another key factor in doing a demand forecasting. And what we have here is, what we call as a polk market data, which gives by county all of the luxury cars that got sold in that county, and that again can be overlaid on top of different background user demography, or customer demography. So what you're seeing here is based on population. What is the market trend here? As you can see, for the period, March 1st, or December 27, 2014 to March 1st, 2016, total number of 33,000 cars were sold, out of which 4,000 was from this manufacturer, right? So this kind of gives you the opportunities that still we have in that market. And another way to look at this opportunity is to look at it from a heat map perspective, right? Now, the red areas are highly opportunistic areas. The penetration here in Los Angeles is just 12.47%. So that is indicated by the word cloud also here, that sales people and marketing folks can focus on that particular geographical area in order to penetrate more. Now, again, all these things are made possible because we are able to bring multiple types of data from different sources, both internal and external to an organization. And we are able to represent that through these kind of dashboards that will help, again, companies to adapt to changing market conditions. Right. So hope that gave you a complete picture, not only from a data warehouse modernization, but also from an analytics modernization perspective, and what kind of analytics is made possible by these modernization processes. With that, I hand it over to Vaishnavi.
Hey, thanks, Ramki. Great insights, Ramki, Mark, and Yusuf. We are now moving into the Q&A section, so please do ask a question. This one came a bit early on. Let me begin with this question. This question asks, how do you compare DB Shift with migration tools provided by cloud DW data warehouse vendors? Ramki, do you want to take that?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't consider the utilities provided by cloud vendors as a competition to DB Shift. We actually leverage those tools. Like with Yellowbrick, we have YB load and unload, which is kind of a very fast process to get data in and out of Yellowbrick system, right? So when we do data migrations, we leverage those tools and utilities as well. Now, where we differentiate from the tools provided by the cloud data warehouse vendors is that we migrate the entire ecosystem. We accelerate and automate the entire ecosystem, and just not the data structures and data historical data migration, right? As I mentioned, we have this whole ETL or ELT process, bringing in data into the data warehouse, as well as on the consumption side. It could be data visualization platforms like Tableau, or it could be straightforward SQLs that are being used to take data out, right? So we just migrate the whole ecosystem, the ETL processes, the dashboards, and as well as any SQLs that are being used to extract data from these platforms. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Ramki. Great. The next one, Mark, I will send it your way. Pavitra asks, what are the considerations when modernizing in the cloud?
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned another question that came online that was very similar to this one as well. I think you, to have a successful modernization process, I think there are actually some organization and managerial things you've got to get right. It's not all about the technology. It's about, do you have full buy-in from your management organization? Do you have full partnerships with the end users of the ultimately the analytics that are consumers, within the lines of business? And I think that's really important. If you try and push through a modernization project from central IT alone without this buy-in, it's going to be very difficult to do. And far too often we see IT organizations that are very attracted to the latest shiny toy in terms of an analytics tool and don't necessarily really think through the requirements of the end users and how any changes will impact them. So I think having that sort of full business buy-in is probably one of the most important considerations.
Fantastic. So thanks, Mark. And I think with that, we are coming to the end of the session. And thank you, Mark, Yusuf, and Ramki. We are excited about our partnership with Yellowbrick, and it's been a pleasure to work with you, Mark. For everyone else here, thank you for attending the webinar. Appreciate that. Also, a big thank you to the attendees and for the questions. If you're looking for more insights, please subscribe and follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and you will get more insights from our experts. I also encourage you to visit our website, www.systechusa.com, and see what we can do for you and sign up for a discussion with our experts. We are happy to further the discussion. Thank you all for joining in, and see you next time.